What would you do if the very place that once felt like home now echoed with someone else's laughter? The chair you used to sit in?
Taken.
The words once spoken to you? Now whispered to another. What if the person you trusted most, the one who said they'd always choose you, chose someone else and never even explained why? There comes a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when everything changes. It doesn't arrive with a loud crash or thunderous applause. No, it slips in like a shadow, subtle and sharp, leaving you blinking into a new reality. That was the moment for me. A moment I'll never forget. I stood at a distance, just far enough to not be seen, but close enough to feel every detail like a sting. Their smile was familiar. I used to be the reason for it. Now it belonged to someone else. Her voice was sweet, polite, maybe even a little fake. But they all adored her. The new one, the unwanted, who somehow became the chosen. She wasn't there in the hard times. She never knew the history, the sacrifices, the dreams. Yet there she was, living in the spot I built with blood, tears, and trust. I was watching my own story being rewritten, and I wasn't even a character anymore. Just an invisible page turned too soon. There's a strange kind of grief that comes when you're replaced without warning. It's not just the absence of presence, it's the silence that follows. No explanation. No apology. Just space filled by someone else, like you were never even real. I tried to understand. Maybe I did something wrong? Maybe I wasn't enough? The questions haunted me, looping endlessly in the quiet moments. But the more I searched for answers, the clearer it became. Some people don't replace you because you lack something. They do it because they lack loyalty. I remember the day I saw them together, holding hands, laughing like nothing had happened. I stood frozen, pretending to scroll my phone, heart pounding, breath shallow. They passed me like a stranger on the street, and for a second, I wondered if I'd made it all up. Was I ever really part of that story? Or just a placeholder until someone better came along? But then something unexpected happened. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it changed everything. A message. A detail overlooked. A truth long buried. Something slipped through the cracks, and what was meant to be hidden began to unravel. The person who took my place wasn't who they pretended to be. And the ones who pushed me out? They were about to learn the cost of forgetting someone who only ever loved them honestly. You see, life has a way of circling back. Not to punish, but to reveal. To bring light where lies once lived. I thought I was erased. But I was being repositioned. What they thought was the end was only the turning point. And this story, the one you're about to hear, isn't just about betrayal. It's about what rises when truth surfaces. It's about reclaiming worth, exposing deception, and the silent power of being underestimated. Because sometimes, the ones you push aside return with a truth too powerful to ignore. Her name is Alina. Not the one who replaced me, no. That was someone else. Alina is me. The version of me that existed before everything changed. A girl with quiet dreams, soft boundaries, and a heart that always believed people meant what they said. I used to be the kind of person who gave chances, even when they weren't deserved. Who forgave too quickly and questioned herself too much. People liked that about me because it made it easy to stay comfortable while taking me for granted. I grew up in a small neighborhood where everyone knew your name and secrets were only whispered behind closed windows. My family was modest, but filled with warmth. My mother taught me patience.
My father taught me strength.
But the world taught me heartbreak. I met a deal in the most ordinary way, through a friend of a friend. Nothing dramatic, no magical sparks. Just two souls that quietly recognized something familiar in each other. We started off as friends, exchanging late-night texts about dreams, regrets, and everything in between. Over time, friendship turned into comfort. Comfort became attachment. And attachment slowly turned into love. But here's the thing, sometimes we confuse familiarity with fate. I thought he was home because he felt like safety. In reality, he was a mirror, reflecting back all the parts of me I still needed to heal. A deal wasn't cruel. Not at first. He was warm when he wanted to be, thoughtful when it was convenient. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only one, until I realized I wasn't. He knew my stories, my scars, my silence. And maybe that's why he knew exactly where to cut when the time came. But before all that, before the shift, we had our moments. Long drives with no destination. Laughter in places only we understood. Secrets exchanged in parked cars at 2 a.m. He told me I was his future. He promised things I never even asked for. And like a fool, I believed him. I wasn't the only one who believed. My family welcomed him like a son. My friends cheered for us. We planned things, subtle hints at what next year might look like. There were talks of houses, of families, of forever. And still something inside me remained cautious. A soft whisper that said, "Not everything that feels good is meant to last." Then she came. Her name was Maha. Pretty, polished, perfect, at least from the outside. The kind of girl who walked in like she owned the room and didn't wait for permission. She was loud where I was quiet, bold where I was soft. And a deal? He was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. It started innocently, or so I thought.
Group hangouts.
Shared projects. Friendly banter.
But I saw it. The shift.
The way his eyes lit up around her. The way mine stopped mattering. I asked once, "Is something going on between you two?" He laughed. "You're overthinking again, Alina. You always do this." That sentence echoed in my ears for weeks. You always do this. He made me doubt myself. Every gut instinct, every moment of unease. Until eventually I stopped asking. Stopped confronting. I convinced myself that being the cool one meant trusting blindly. But blind trust is dangerous when the person you're trusting is hiding something behind their smile. Slowly, I was pushed to the background. Plans were canceled. Messages left on read. Conversations became shorter. His words became colder. And still, I held on. Because that's what we do, right? We hold on to memories, not people. To what was, not what is. I remember the day everything changed. It wasn't loud. Just a photo. A tag on social media. A comment that wasn't meant to be seen. And there it was, the truth I had been trying not to find. Adil and Maha, together. Smiling. Holding hands. In the exact spot where he once promised me the world. My heart didn't break all at once. It cracked slowly. Quietly. Piece by piece. And with each piece, I felt a version of myself fade. The trusting girl. The forgiving partner. The hopeful believer. People asked me what happened. I didn't have an answer. Because there was no closure. No explanation. Just silence from the person who once said he'd never hurt me. Silence from the girl who knew I existed and took my place anyway. I became invisible. But I wasn't gone. Because while they were busy building a lie, I was busy rebuilding myself. This is the part of the story no one saw. The nights I cried myself to sleep. The mornings I forced myself to get up. The therapy sessions. The journal pages. The prayers whispered into pillows. The rage. The numbness. The acceptance. And eventually, the strength. The strength to stop begging for an apology that would never come. The strength to walk away from people who couldn't even meet me with honesty. The strength to realize that being replaced wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a revelation of theirs. So, I became someone else. Not in bitterness, but in clarity. I learned to smile again, not for them, but for myself. I reconnected with old hobbies, old friends, old pieces of myself I had abandoned to fit into their story. I stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing myself. And that's when everything started shifting again. People began noticing, asking questions. Whispers turned into worries. The unwanted who took my place was starting to show cracks. And the one who let me go? He was beginning to wonder if he'd made a mistake he couldn't undo. But by then, I wasn't the same girl anymore. I was still Alina. But this time, I was the version of her who knew exactly what she deserved. They say silence can be the loudest sound, and in the weeks that followed the betrayal, silence was all I had. Adil didn't call.
He didn't text.
Not a single word of explanation or regret. Just nothing. As if I was a season that had passed, a page he turned without reading to the end. But the universe has a way of echoing the truth, even when people try to bury it. I began hearing things. Quiet murmurs from mutual friends. They don't look happy together. He seems distant. Maha's acting different now. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to hear about them. I didn't want to reopen wounds I was trying so hard to heal. But curiosity, that dangerous, whispering thing, began to creep in. Was he happy? Had she given him what I couldn't? Or was he starting to see the difference between someone who looked good beside him and someone who stood by him? Then came the message. An unknown number. No name. Just one line. I didn't know it would end like this. I stared at the screen for minutes. My heart raced. My hands trembled. I knew who it was. I didn't reply. Not out of pride, but because I knew this wasn't the real conversation he wanted to have. It was guilt, not remorse. A moment of weakness, not accountability. And I wasn't going to offer him the comfort of my words when he didn't deserve my silence to begin with. But that message, it was the beginning of the unraveling. More began to surface. Screenshots. Conversations Maha had with others, sent to me anonymously. She'd been talking behind Adil's back. Flirting.
Lying.
Creating drama where none existed.
And Adil?
He was beginning to feel it. The weight of his choice. The cost of what he lost. One night, I received another message. This time from a mutual friend who had remained quiet during the fallout. He looks miserable. He's not the same. I think he's finally realizing she isn't you.
Funny, isn't it?
When they finally see your worth, it's always too late. But while his world was beginning to crumble, mine was taking new shape. I had started a new job. One that challenged me, grew me, and reminded me that I had more to offer than just being someone's emotional caretaker. I was surrounded by people who respected me, who didn't make me question my place in their lives. I was healing, slowly, deeply. But the tension wasn't over.
No.
In fact, the storm hadn't even reached its peak yet. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening. The kind of rain that feels poetic, like it's washing away more than just dust from the streets. I was walking out of a coffee shop, umbrella in hand, when I saw him. Adil. Standing across the street. Alone.
Soaked.
Staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. I froze. Every memory hit me at once. Every laugh, every lie, every "I'll never hurt you."
He didn't say anything.
Just started walking toward me, slowly, cautiously. As if he wasn't sure whether to apologize or run. And in that moment, I had a choice. To turn away or to listen. I listened. "Alina," he said softly. I've been trying to find the words, but I had heard enough. And yet, some part of me needed to hear more. Not for closure, but for clarity. So we sat. In that same coffee shop we used to visit. The air was heavy. The silence even heavier. He looked different. Tired. Older. Not in age, in spirit. "I made a mistake," he said, eyes on the table. "She wasn't who I thought she was. And I wasn't who you thought I was either." I didn't speak. He continued. At first, it felt exciting.
New.
She made me feel seen, in a different way. But it wasn't real. She didn't know me, not the way you did. She loved the version of me I pretended to be. You loved the version I tried to hide. It was true. I had loved his broken parts. His fears. His doubts. I held space for his darkness while he ran towards someone else's light. And now, here he was, sitting across from me, asking for forgiveness without saying the word. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. I looked at him and said, You didn't just choose her. You unchose me. And that choice has a consequence." He nodded. "I know." I stood up. "I hope you heal, Adil. Truly. But I'm not the same girl you left behind. And I'm not yours to lose again." As I walked out, I felt the tension break, like a string that had been pulled tight for too long finally snapping free. But the story didn't end there. Because Maha, she wasn't done. It turns out being chosen doesn't feel as sweet when the spotlight fades. She had begun telling people her version of the story, painting herself as the victim, accusing me of manipulation, of bitterness. But the truth has a voice. And when people started seeing how she treated others, her lies began to unravel. Suddenly, people who once believed her turned away. Friends she used to charm grew cold. And Adil? He was stuck between two versions of reality, the one he believed and the one he now saw. That's when the unexpected happened. I received a message from Maha. Long, rambling, defensive. But in the middle of all the words, one line stood out. Maybe you weren't the one who lost. Maybe I was.
Yes, she was.
Because in trying to take my place, she forgot. You can never steal what was never meant for you. And if you do manage to take it, it will never bring you peace. Adil lost more than a relationship. He lost a version of himself he might never get back. And Maha? She gained everything she thought she wanted, only to realize it came with shadows she couldn't outrun. As for me,
I didn't win.
I rose. Not in revenge. Not in spite. In self-respect. In boundaries.
In peace.
I started writing again. Painting again. Laughing louder. Loving better. Not someone else, but myself. And one day, as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I whispered to myself. The unwanted took my place. But the unexpected gave me back my power. The tension had been building, and everything I had been avoiding was now coming to a head. I had walked away from the past, but it seemed the past wasn't done with me just yet. Days after my encounter with Adil, I started receiving strange messages from an unknown account. The content was cryptic, hinting at secrets, half-truths, and unsettling revelations. The messages spoke of betrayal, not just from Adil, but from someone else. The word, blackmail, floated in the dark spaces between my thoughts. As I scrolled through the unsettling words, I realized I wasn't just being pulled back into Adil's chaos. No, there was something else at play, something much deeper, something that made me question my very understanding of trust and loyalty. And then, the message that broke it all open arrived. You need to meet. Tomorrow. Midnight. The park. Bring nothing but yourself. A wave of dread washed over me. Every instinct told me to stay away, to ignore the message, and keep walking the path I had started carving for myself. But curiosity gnawed at my insides. What was this about? What had I missed? I had no answers, only questions, and a sense of urgency that tugged at my soul. By the time midnight rolled around, the park was eerily quiet. The moon cast long shadows, and the air was thick with the kind of silence that presses in on your chest. As I approached the designated meeting spot, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Adil. He looked different, more haggard, more uncertain. You came, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Of course I came, I replied, my own voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. But why did you ask me to meet you here? I'm not the one who called you. He stepped forward, his face shadowed by the dim light. I didn't want any of this. But there are things you don't know. And things you need to know. The words hung in the air like a heavy mist. What are you talking about? I asked, my patience wearing thin. The messages, they're not from me. But they're about me, about Maha. His words were fragmented, as though they weren't fully formed in his mind yet. And there's more, Alina. More than just what you've seen. More than what you've heard. I felt a chill run through me. The pieces of this puzzle weren't fitting together, and yet, I could feel the answer coming, like an invisible force pulling everything into place. Adil stepped closer, his eyes wide with fear. Maha's been hiding something. Something she's been using to control me, and now, it's coming for you. I took a step back, my mind racing. Control? Maha had always been manipulative, but this was different. And Adil, standing here in front of me, his face twisted in desperation, told me everything I needed to know. I don't understand, I said, my voice soft but firm. What is she hiding? Adil's eyes flickered to the ground, then back to me. It's bigger than what we thought. The blackmail, the lies, everything, it's connected to something from our past. Something that's been buried for years. I stared at him, my confusion mounting. What do you mean? What past? Adil swallowed hard, then spoke the words I had never imagined hearing. When we were together, before all this happened, I wasn't just hiding things from you. I was hiding the truth from myself. We both were. But it wasn't just about us. It was about a deal. A deal I made when I was younger. A deal with people I shouldn't have trusted. And now, those same people are coming for us. My mind reeled. A deal? What kind of deal? And who were these people he spoke of? I never wanted you involved, Alina, Adil continued, his voice thick with regret. But this isn't just about me anymore. It's about you too. And I'm sorry. I was too proud to tell you, too afraid to admit the truth. But I see it now. I see what I should have seen all along. I felt a sudden surge of understanding. All this time, I had been caught in a web of lies, of misplaced loyalty. And now, Adil was confessing to something that ran much deeper than I could have ever imagined. His betrayal wasn't just a matter of the heart. It was a matter of survival. Tell me what I need to do, I said, my voice steady as I tried to process the gravity of what he was revealing. What's happening? What's coming for us? Adil took a deep breath, his eyes locked on mine. I don't know, Alina, but I've seen the consequences. The people I got involved with, they don't just want to ruin us. They want to destroy us. And they won't stop until they get what they want. A cold sense of dread filled my chest as I processed his words. This was no longer just about a broken relationship or a toxic love triangle. This was something much bigger, something far more dangerous. Are you asking me to help you? I asked, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. Adil nodded, his face full of shame. I don't know what else to do. But I can't fight this alone. We need to work together to stop what's coming. I stood there for a long moment, the weight of his request pressing down on me. There was so much to process. So much I didn't understand. But one thing was clear. My past with Adil had never been just about us. It had always been part of something bigger, something far darker. The sound of footsteps broke the silence, and I turned to see another figure approaching from the shadows.
Maha.
My pulse quickened. What was she doing here? And why had she come? Maha, I said coldly, stepping away from Adil. What's going on? She smirked, her eyes flashing with something between triumph and fear. You think you're the only one in control, Alina? You think this is your fight to win? You don't understand the game. You never did.
Her words hit me like a slap.
You're playing with fire, I warned, my voice low and dangerous. And you don't know who you're dealing with. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not the one who's been blind, Alina. It's you. A sudden realization hit me like a wave. Maha wasn't just playing a game. She was a player in a much larger scheme. And the very thing she had been hiding, the very secret she had been holding over Adil's head, was the key to everything. The truth will come out, Maha, and when it does, you'll wish you had never crossed me. The moment I spoke those words, I felt a shift. The energy around me changed. No longer was I the victim in this twisted game. No longer was I at the mercy of Adil's decisions or Maha's lies. Now, I was the one holding the power. And as I watched her face turn pale, I realized something I should have known all along. No one could take my place. Not then, not now. I was more than just a chapter in their story. I was the author of my own. As the silence of the night pressed in, I stood there, the weight of everything finally hitting me. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, they no longer held power over me. Maha, Adil, the twisted deal from the past, none of it could define me anymore. I had stepped out of the shadows, walked through the storm, and now, for the first time in years, I could breathe. The pieces of the puzzle were no longer scattered and confusing. The truth was clear, even if it had come at a price. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It wasn't the manipulation nor the lies. No, the real pain had been in my own inability to see the truth sooner, to see through the fog of emotions and recognize the signs of my own strength. But now, standing here, alone with the knowledge of what I could do, who I could become, I realized that I had the power to rewrite the story. Not just for me, but for anyone who had ever been a pawn in someone else's game. There's a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether to keep playing someone else's game or to create their own rules. A moment when you must take the power back, not by force, but by knowing your worth, your value, and your purpose. This was my moment. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my choices and the liberation they brought. I could walk away from this dark chapter, or I could step into the light and embrace the future waiting for me. I chose the light. And so, the story of betrayal and manipulation became the story of my victory. The unexpected turn of events was no longer an obstacle, but a new beginning. A new chapter, one where I held the pen. In this world, we all have our battles. Sometimes they are against others. Sometimes they are against ourselves. But what matters most is how we rise from them, how we choose to fight, and who we become in the end. So ask yourself this: what is the truth you've been hiding from? And how will you rise above it? The world is waiting for you. It's time to write your own story.